Hello and welcome back to Microvellum Live. We are glad that you took the time to join us here today. So last week we kicked off our schedule by learning how to add custom prompts to products, and we learned a few tips and tricks to help speed up our drafting in Toolbox and AutoCAD. If you missed these sessions, the recordings are available on our website and our social media channels right now. Today we're going to be hearing from Lenny Sienna, our resident library expert, and he's going to show us a few tips and tricks of his own related to library data. We'll have a look at Workbook Designer, the Name Manager utility, and a few other areas of Toolbox related to creating and navigating around in the product data. So let's get right into it. How's it going today, Lenny?
Doing pretty good. Looking forward to it.
Great. Awesome.
Okay. So for today's topic, thanks everybody for joining in on our little live event here. I'm looking forward to maybe showing off a few new things that you didn't know about. But I'm going to be covering what I think, now I might be a little biased, but I think this is Microvellum's secret weapon, if you will, under the hood. Something that kind of makes Microvellum very unique in its approach. Last week, Matt Parasher showed us this part properties UI, which was tremendous. And definitely, you want to go back, if you didn't see it, go back and have a look at that recording. So he did a great job. I use this UI all the time, especially when it comes to the parts or the machine tokens, right? Because it tells me all the information about all the parts and the machine tokens that are on the parts. So it's good stuff. But for me personally, I kind of prefer getting down to the nitty gritty and kind of going right to where all this product information is actually stored. So kind of where I want to see, where Microvellum is seeing it or is reading it. And it's basically an Excel spreadsheet. I was thinking about this, back in the day before we all used computers, what did our grandparents and our forefathers before us, what did they use for cut lists, right? For their cabinetry. I know my grandfather was building cabinets back in the 60s, right? And he just simple handwritten grid or like a list, right? They would list out all the parts and the sizes and the quantities and the materials. So when I was first introduced to Microvellum and I saw this, that it was just basically a spreadsheet that was where it was being stored, I was like sold. I mean, this just makes way too much sense for my brain. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, in fact, I was more than sold. I was kind of hooked on the whole concept of how really simple this is. And keep in mind, what we're looking at here is the spreadsheet for this product here. This is not like an export of what you did in the drawing. If you're new to Microvellum, maybe this is new to you. This is actually the opposite. This spreadsheet actually tells AutoCAD what to draw, how to draw it. And oh, by the way, it also tells your machine what to cut and how to machine it. And it's really kind of the center of the Microvellum universe and just how all these products work. For example, here's your parts. So I can just insert a row and, copy the part and then paste it. And now I have a new part, it's that easy. What else can we do? You've got your length, what the materials are. You've got, if there's hardware, it lists out the hardware in the product, lists out what are called sub-assemblies. And then, Matt, last week was shown as prompts. And this is where all those prompts are actually stored. So you can do it in the part properties, but you can also equally do it in here as well. By simply right-clicking, you can insert a prompt and then, put in a new prompt like that. And then you just define it and you have a new prompt, tell it whatever it is. You can copy paste. This little deal here is what we call defined names. So, I can see that this is defined as such. And so that's all it is. Let's see. one of the criticisms that I hear about Microvellum is, oh, these spreadsheets, they're so complicated and the formulas are so hard to understand. I'll give you that. Maybe it's not for everybody, or maybe some areas of this are definitely true. That criticism, the formulas do, some of them start to get a little big, or they might look outwards to other workbooks, and so this can kind of begin to kind of make your head spin. There is a pretty high ceiling for what you can do in here. So my general advice is, if you're in an area, if you're kind of struggling to understand a formula, like what does this mean here? You probably maybe shouldn't be tinkering in that area. Maybe do some more learning or get some help. But a lot of this it's actually pretty simple. And there are tricks. I'll show you some tricks here of how to break it down into more smaller chunks for we can make it easier to understand. Or if you're just wanting to make a small adjustment to a one-time change, like this side, you don't even have to understand what any of this means. I can just go to the end of it and just say, well, I'm going to add 5 inches to that part, and there you go. It just added 5 inches, and then you could close and redraw, and you'll have a bigger part. So that's one thing you can do. You can also, as far as breaking it down, so the depth, of course, that's our defined name, right? So the depth, which is looking, if you go down to depth, it sends you over to that prompt depth. All right, well, that makes sense. So it's the depth minus, and then we have this gibberish here, right? If you've never seen this before, it looks intimidating. If you highlight, so Excel, of course, uses functions, and there's lots of documentation online about Excel functions, which is cool, so that you instantly have access to a lot of helpful information. But if you don't want to leave this area, you can highlight the function and then press this FX function editor, and this kind of breaks it out for us. And it's an if statement, right? So if this is true, which it is, then return this value. Otherwise, just go to 0. And that's it. So we're saying depth minus this this value here. And if you hit cancel, one little trick that it does, it highlights that area of the formula. So then we can keep going. All right, so then it goes minus, and it does it again. Blah, blah, blah. If it's an overlay door, which it is, then subtract 7/8. Okay. That's it. So there's your formula. And also that function editor has help information. Let's see here. Maybe I'll go to a little more complicated one. So if I go to the bottom, all right, let's have a look here. So we've got our width, length, material, edge banding, then the XYZ. So that's kind of where that part is floating in 3D space. This tells AutoCAD, do you want to draw it or not? Okay. If it has draw 3D box, that simply means, yes, I want to see that in AutoCAD. If you don't want to see it in AutoCAD, you can just type 0 or just blank it out, and you'll still get your cut part, and but you won't see it. If we keep cruising over to the right, starting here, we have all the tokens, and it's actually quite simple. You have the name of the token, and then you have 9 parameters of that token, and then it repeats. Token 2, 9 parameters, and on to however many thousands of rows, columns, Excel lets us do. These zeros simply means that the token is off right now, so it doesn't do anything. There's formulas that turn tokens on and off based on, different prompts, right? So this happens to have cam lock construction. So I know if I keep coming over here, I'm going to hit a cam lock token. There it is. So we have our cam lock token on the bottom of the part. It's going to the left, cam lock 3, and then we have our cam lock 4, yep, is going to the right. So something a little more, I wanted to find a Vlookup function. So a Vlookup is another common function. It's all over the library. And it may be like, well, what does that mean? What is it really doing? And this is what's nice is when you break into this, so it tells us, right, it has help. looks to the value in this column and it returns the value, blah blah blah. So you can, and even each parameter, what is it doing? So I know parameter false. I always forget what is true and false. It explains it right here. So that's one nice thing about this function editor. And I can't talk about the function editor. Someone recently didn't even, they used Microvellum for years and never realized that up here is a combo box. So you can explore all kinds of other functions that are available. Some of them we call custom functions. So it's a function that Excel doesn't have. So Microvellum, we programmed our own functions that do, things that really only have to do with Microvellum, like construction hole spacing or edge band property, right? That's not from Microsoft. That's a Microvellum function. And so you can go into any of these. This one here is a conversion. So that says imperial to units. So I can put a value in here like 5 inches, and since we're in metric, or sorry, if we're in imperial, so it's just going to return 5. But if this was in a metric environment, it would convert it. So that's a cool little thing in there. Let's see here. So basically, yeah, so this is called edit design data. You can get to it. I have a shortcut right here. I think it's under modify if you don't have a shortcut for it. It's useful for the basic formula edits, adding prompts, moving parts around, deleting parts, or making quick edits, or just lightweight work. For some of the more advanced, if you really want to get into more extensive library development, we have what's called the Workbook Designer. This guy right here. And again, this might be a little bit scary for some people. I don't know. I guess it depends on how comfortable you are in this environment. But from here, we can kind of look at how all the different workbooks are interacting. So the L stands for the local product. I usually double click it to open that. And then you can bounce around, like, well, I want to look at my global. So here's my global variables, or I want to look at my project wizard. So here's my project wizard. And then these are what's called the workbook set. It's what's loaded in memory at this moment in time. And it comes in really handy. So like maybe you're looking at a formula here and it's referencing like global, mortise depth, all right? Well, that G means it's looking outwards to the global. So you can just quickly go to the global and just go to mortise. What did that say? Mortise depth, right? You just click there and it sends you right to it. Oh, 1/4 inch. Okay. That's what that is. And so then you can go right back to your product. So you kind of see what I mean by it's real quick to go back and forth, opposed to like going to the global interface, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with the global interface, but when you start getting into more advanced data development, you need to be really quick, right? Less clicks. So that's a good tip. What else can we do in here? We can have a look at our global. There's a lookup table, so over here. So this would be an example of a defined range. So as I highlight it, you can see that it illuminates here. Speaking of that, if we go to our name manager, which is another tool I want to show you here. So this is name manager, simply lists out all of those defined cells or defined cell, singular or plural. So like if I click on accuracy and I click in this box here, it sends me right to accuracy. And so we can do a variety of things here. We can check for things that are maybe orphaned. I've seen sometimes people, they'll delete cells, which will then orphan defined names. So you can get that cleaned up. You can show overlapping, which means, so this is a cell that you really shouldn't be doing this. It's kind of a no-no. I try to avoid this, but we have 2 different defined names that are pointing to the same cell, which is generally not what you want to do. So it gives you the opportunity to kind of clean those up. So yeah, so that's that. We can edit, the define range. In fact, if you go to your lookup tables, which is right here. If I click that, see, it sends you right to that defined range. It kind of illuminates it, right? And then you say you want to add more columns, you can add more columns and then edit the range to move the defined range. So that's really, really cool. Let's see here. Make sure I don't miss anything. Definitely a quick reminder as I'm talking about all this, maybe some people are cringing. Oh, you definitely want to, especially if you're new to this or learning it for the first time, create a sandbox, create a backup. You wouldn't want to mess something up in your global and then have this global. I mean, right now it's fairly safe what I've shown you so far because it's just pertaining to this one project. So the most harm you could do would be that project. But, you know, who knows, maybe that global gets saved back to your template. You know, just be careful and make regular backups, especially as you're learning. Okay, I have a few minutes left. I did want to, let's back out of this for a moment. And just have a general talk about the library as a whole. So, all right, so here's your, some of you may be wondering, what is this? It's a newer office furniture library, in case you're wondering what it is I've got going on here. So all of these naturally are user definable, meaning you have control over all of this, right? This isn't fixed into the program source code. This is just loose spreadsheets that we were just looking at. And so the way we can interact with this is what's called Database Explorer. And I have a shortcut to it. I use it all the time. If you don't have a shortcut, you just go to your options, go to your utilities, and right here, Database Explorer, right? So this is our portal into the database. You drill into your library, and here we can see our products, right? Subassemblies, which is kind of a library within a library. And then we even have our spec groups, right? We have your globals and project wizards, etc. But any of these here, if you drill into like the credenza category, okay, these are on the left here. This left-hand column is currently in your database. So whenever you create a job and you pull in products from your library, this is what's being pulled from. So one little trick is you can just double click one of these and opens it right up. So L is your product. You can make a quick little edit, quick little change or whatever, close and save, and you're done. So it's a lot less clicks than like, say, adding it into a project, making your edits, trying to, save it back to the library. There's just more clicks that way. If I want to come in here and just do a real quick edit, that's really quick. You can also rename a product, right? Set new name, set new image. You can change this little picture. We can delete. We can create new categories by coming up here and saying new, add a category. We can find a product. One of my favorite things to do is, speaking of backups, so if I go to I created this folder here, right, called Microvellum Live. So on the right-hand side of your screen is your disk drive, right, your actual directories. What you can do is click one, or you can click one product. You can shift click multiple products. You can shift click several categories. Doesn't matter. You can drag and drop them onto disk. And what that does is now you have a little backup of those files, okay? And if there's an associated image with it, it also, so it basically puts it on disk. So if I go to that location, Microvellum Live, so here it just created these files on disk, right? So this is just outside, completely outside of Microvellum. So if I wanted to give it to a coworker or open it up with my Workbook Designer utility, which is kind of like Microvellum's Excel, you can do that. If you prefer actual Microsoft Excel, you can do that by right-clicking, open with, and picking, Microsoft Excel, right? It says cut X, but really under the hood, it's actually just an XLS. So this is really cool because like I'll be working in one product and I want to verify a formula, or I can just immediately have it. Or if I mess up, make a boo-boo on one of my products, it's not the end of the world. I can just drag and drop and overwrite and bring, and restore it. So a lot of things we can do with this utility. Last thing, I'm probably running out of time here, so I'll make this my last point, unless Clay wants me to keep going. If you add anything in here, like new category, all right, and let's say I don't know, let me rename one of these to, let's just call it test, okay? Oh, by the way, if you have a JPEG that's the same name, that's what happens here. So I have the cut and the JPEG are the same name. When you bring it in like that, it will automatically assign the image for you. Just a little tip. That just saves you the step of having to do it manually. So yeah, so you've added this category, added this product, okay? So we're gonna hit close. Now it says, hey, you need to restart, which is not untrue. The reason it's saying that is it's not really in memory right now at the moment. So if I come to new category, there's nothing in there. So that may periodically happen to you, like, what, where's my change? Where's my product? So one little tip is, who wants to restart AutoCAD, right? You just come over here to project, change active library, and you get this, and you just click your library and click OK, and that forces it to refresh. And then when you do, where is it at? New category, there's your product. So that's a little tip I like to show people that saves some time. I guess the only other thing I was going to say, boy, that's a lot of work, Lenny. All those products are all workbooks. And I've been around Microvellum long enough that I know that the maintenance is just ginormous, having to all those workbooks. And what do you do if you want to make a change to all of them all at once? And so, and a long time ago, that's what we used to have to do. We would go into each one at a time, go in, make a change, save, go on, make a change, save, and it was kind of a nightmare. So, but now it's 2020, we no longer have to do that. We just have a tool called Library Designer. Maybe this will be a topic for another live event. Library Designer organizes all those workbooks into a giant list, and so from here we can edit all of our sides all at once. Boom, boom. And so this tool will propagate a change across all your library products way faster, but I've run out of time. I can't get into that. It's a little teaser for another live event. I think on that note, I told Clay I would keep it around 20 minutes, and I think I need to do that. See, maybe there are any questions that I need to...
Yeah, there are a few questions in here.
Should I take one of them here? So our Workbook Designer is different than the one on your video. For example, okay. So probably what might look different is this is a different library. So maybe some of the columns are going to be very different. Let me think here. Drawer, slide, lookup columns are missing. Yeah, I would have a check with your tech support ticket on that and see have a look at it. His question is basically what to do when his Workbook Designer is different. I'm not sure if he's talking about the user interface Workbook Designer. It's probably just the library data is different. And maybe I shouldn't have had this library today. This is a little bit different. So you can also come up to here. If I go to library, this button here. So yeah, the US libraries have a lot of different lookup tables. This library is quite a bit different. In fact, it's radically different. The drawers are more locally controlled, and so I'm sorry, I don't really have a good answer for you. I don't really understand the question. Other than I think it's just the data that's different. I could draw one that has drawers. This library it's doing drawers quite a bit different in that the here's the drawer, so it's like a meta box, okay, and the lookup tables are stored in, so here's like all the runner holes, they're stored in the subassembly itself, thereby keeping it more self-contained, so we can update people a lot easier this way without having to meddle with your globals. So totally different. All right, Clay. Well, I think that's probably, I should stop there.
Yeah, we did have another question from Christian. He asked, he says, I freelance. Can I share my products with his clients, and will it work with their library?
Sure. I would recommend having a different configuration. So, you know, when you first boot up Microvellum, you'll have a choice for different configurations. So when you're working with a particular client, have a configuration. Let me just show you. I'll open up my other OEM 2019 here. I'll show you for an example. Pardon me, just a sec while it loads. So each client you're working with have its own configuration. Okay, so right now mine is kind of an insane example because I have lots of different libraries, but I have all these different versions. So you could have like different clients can have a different configuration, and each one of these is pointing to a different database. So you can have a completely different data set. And so if you're working for a client, work with their data. So develop the new stuff in that, and then you can give it to them by, you know, using that Explorer. If it's just, let's say you're just one product that you've done for them, you could just drop it out into a spreadsheet, give it to them that way, or you can export it. We have new export utilities that work good. So that's some quick thoughts on that.
All right, thanks, Lenny, for sharing those tips with us and giving us some insight there into some of your workflows. And if you want to learn more about how to work with data, we'll be having another event on Friday, April 17th at 11 a.m. Pacific time. We'll be hearing from Lenny once again, and he'll help us with the topic of how to cherry pick features from product libraries. So if you've seen some of the data that we've come out with recently and you're wondering how you might get these specific products or features from those libraries into your own custom library, you won't want to miss that one. So that will do it for today. I hope you'll join us tomorrow for another live session. At 4 p.m. Pacific time, we will be learning about our scrap management tools. We'll have a chat with Ludwig, one of our techs from Australia, and we'll go through a bit of the setup and show you how you can start using scrap material within your next projects for nesting or sawing. If you haven't registered for this session, you can go to microvellum.com/live to check out our schedule and register. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and we'll catch up with you again tomorrow.